The job posting didn't say what the work was. It said, "Detail-oriented reviewer needed for archival image correction. Downtown office. Full-time, immediate start." And it listed a wage that was almost exactly double what I'd been making. And I applied from my phone in the parking lot of the place I'd been let go from 40 minutes earlier, before I'd even finished the drive home to tell my wife. I should explain that part, because it matters to why I stayed as long as I did. I wasn't broke. That wasn't my pressure. My pressure was my wife, Donna, who was 7 months pregnant with our first, and a lease we'd signed on a bigger apartment specifically because of the baby, signed in the 2 weeks before the layoff I didn't see coming. We weren't desperate yet. We were the much worse thing, which is people who are fine right now and can do the math on exactly when they won't be. I had maybe 4 months of cushion and a kid arriving in 2. And a wife who'd quit her own job to take a better one that didn't start until spring. I needed work fast, and I needed it to pay. And I'm embarrassed to say that when a recruiter called me back the same afternoon, I didn't ask nearly enough questions, because I was afraid that asking questions was a luxury people in my situation didn't get. The recruiter was a woman named Pell, and she was brisk in a way I found reassuring at the time. She said the company was called Continental Aero Visual Records, that they did image archiving and correction work under contract for aviation and insurance clients, and that the work was painstaking but not difficult, and that the main qualification was the ability to sit still, look closely, and do the same thing correctly 10,000 times without getting sloppy. She asked if I got bored easily. I said no, which was true. She asked if I had any condition that affected my eyesight or my perception of color. I said no, which was also true, and which I'd remember her asking. She asked if I was the kind of person who needed to understand the reason behind a task, or the kind who could just follow the procedure. I said I could follow the procedure. She said good, that was the right answer, and that the wrong answer would have ended the call. I started that Monday. The office was on the 9th floor of a building downtown that had clearly been nicer in the 80s and had been coasting ever since. The lobby had a marble floor with a crack running through it that someone had filled with the wrong color grout. The elevator had an inspection certificate that had expired the previous year, and a small handwritten sign taped over the certificate that just said, "Working," as if that were the relevant question. The 9th floor smelled, the whole time I worked there, like cold coffee and the particular dust that gets into the felt of cubicle walls and never comes out. And underneath that, very faintly, like ozone, the smell you get near old equipment that runs hot. There were about 20 of us, in 2 rows of cubicles along a windowless inner wall, each cubicle with an old desktop tower, a monitor that was good for its age, a desk lamp, and a pair of foam headphones nobody used for music. The supervisor was a man named Greaves, 50s, soft-spoken, with the patient tiredness of a man who has explained the same thing to 100 new hires and watched most of them leave. He gave me my training himself, at my cubicle, the first morning, and the training took about 90 minutes, and at the end of it, I understood the mechanics of the job completely, and the nature of it not at all. The work was this. On my monitor all day, the software loaded photographs of the sky. Just the sky. Aerial photographs, Greaves said, from survey aircraft, insurance flyovers, agricultural mapping, that kind of thing. Except that the images had been cropped, so that all you saw was the upper portion of the frame, the sky and clouds, no ground, no horizon usually, just a rectangle of sky. They came in one after another, thousands a day. And my job was to look at each one and compare it against a reference value the software displayed in the corner a set of numbers describing what the sky in that image was supposed to look like. Cloud cover percentage, light angle, a color value for the blue, a handful of other figures I learned to read fast. And if the image matched the reference, I clicked confirm and it went away and the next one loaded. And if the image didn't match the reference, if the sky in the photo showed more cloud than the numbers said, or the wrong shade of blue, or light coming from the wrong angle, I used a set of tools to correct the image until it matched the reference. And then I clicked confirm and it went away. Greaves was very clear about the direction of the correction. "You're not correcting the numbers," he said. "The numbers are right. The numbers are the record. You're correcting the image to match the record. If the photo and the record disagree, the photo is what's wrong. Always. You make the picture agree with the number, never the other way around. There is no button that lets you change the number. And if you ever think you found one, you call me before you touch it." I asked the obvious question, the one anybody would ask. I asked why an aerial photo of the sky would ever disagree with the record in the first place. Wasn't the photo just the photo? How does a picture of the sky come out wrong? Greaves gave me an answer I accepted at the time and have turned over a great deal since. He said the imaging equipment on survey aircraft was old and inconsistent, that lenses degraded and sensors drifted, and that decades of archived imagery had accumulated errors from bad equipment, bad film, bad scanning, bad weather logging, all of it, and that the clients, the aviation and insurance people, needed the archive to be internally consistent, needed every image to match its logged conditions for legal and actuarial reasons. And so, they paid people like us to go through the backlog, image by image, and fix the discrepancies. He made it sound like data cleanup, tedious, defensible, boring. He was good at making it sound boring. I'd learned that making it sound boring was most of his actual job. So I did it. The first day I corrected maybe 400 images and confirmed another 600 that already matched. And my eyes ached, and my wrist ached, and I drove home and told Dana it was the most boring job I'd ever had, and that I'd take boring at that wage every day of the week. She laughed. She put my hand on her belly and the baby kicked, and I felt better about everything than I had in weeks. I want that on the record too. That there was a stretch at the start where the job was just a job, and I was just grateful. The other people on the floor were quiet, but not unfriendly. There was a routine to the place. The small rituals offices grow. There was a coffee machine in the break room that made coffee the color and roughly the temperature of dishwater, and a vending machine that took your money and gave you the item below the one you selected, so that people had worked out a system of buying the thing above what they actually wanted. There was a woman named Okafor in the cubicle next to mine who'd been there 2 years and who told me, the first week, the things you tell a new hire, where the good pens were kept, which bathroom on the floor below was cleaner, that Greaves was decent and would cover for you if you needed to leave early for something real, but that you never, ever clicked confirm on an image you hadn't actually looked at, because the software tracked your dwell time, the number of seconds your eyes were on each image. And if your dwell time dropped too low, you got pulled into a meeting. And people who got pulled into that meeting twice didn't come back. I asked her why it mattered so much. "It's just sky," I said. "Click confirm, move on. What's the harm in going fast?" She looked at me for a second longer than the question deserved. The way Greaves had looked at me. The way I'd later realize everyone who'd been there a while looked at new people when the new people said something that revealed how little they understood. "The harm," she said, "is that you might confirm one you shouldn't have. Just look at every single one. All the way. It's the whole job. It's the only thing they actually care about." And then she turned back to her monitor, and that was the end of it. And I filed it under the kind of overcautious advice that veterans of any job give new people, the way a guy at a warehouse tells you to lift with your legs. The first thing that didn't sit right happened in my second week, and it was so small I almost didn't register it. The images came with a header bar across the top, thin, gray, with the file information, a reference number, a date, a time, and a location code. A string of letters and digits I assumed was an airfield or a survey grid. Most of the dates were old, 70s, 80s, 90s. Decades of backlog, like Greaves said. And the locations were all over, codes I didn't recognize and didn't try to. It was all just sky to me. But that second week, I confirmed an image, an ordinary one, light overcast, and the next one loaded. And the header said the date was 3 days in the future. I noticed it the way you notice a typo. My brain corrected it before I'd consciously read it. Assumed I'd misread. And I'd already half-clicked confirm when something made me stop and look again. The date was 3 days out, a date that hadn't happened yet. I sat there with my cursor over the confirm button and I read the header 3 times and it didn't change. I almost called Greaves over. I want to be honest that the only reason I didn't was that I was 2 weeks in and afraid of looking stupid, afraid of being the new guy who flagged a typo in a header and got a tired look. So I did the thing I'd come to do 100 times in that office. I found a reasonable explanation, and I clicked confirm. The explanation was that the dates were probably in some internal format I didn't understand. A Julian date or a fiscal calendar or a scan date rather than a capture date. That a future date was a clerical artifact. That it meant nothing. I confirmed the image. It went away. The next one loaded with a date from 1987, and I forgot about it, mostly. But I started watching the dates after that, the way you start noticing a make of car after you've bought one. And over the next few weeks, I saw it again. Not often. Maybe 1 image in 1,000 had a date that hadn't happened yet. Always within a week or 2 of the present. And here's the thing I noticed that turned watching into something else. The future dated images were the ones most likely to disagree with their reference values. The old ones, the 70s and 80s images, almost always matched, or needed only tiny corrections. A hair of cloud cover, a shade of blue. The future dated ones were always wrong. Always showed something the record didn't. More cloud, darker light. Once, a sky the deep bruised color of a storm coming in. Against a reference that said, clear, full sun, and I corrected it. I painted that storm out of the sky tool by tool until it matched the number that said the day would be clear. And I clicked confirm. And I sat back. And for the first time since I'd started, and I felt the specific discomfort of a man who has done a small thing correctly and suspects the small thing is part of a large wrong thing he can't see the shape of. I told myself I was bored and inventing patterns. The human brain finds patterns in sky. Literally, that's what clouds are. I told Dana about the job again that night, and I didn't mention the dates because there was nothing to mention. Just a feeling. And you don't bring a feeling home to a pregnant wife who's counting on the wage. The rules accumulated slowly, the way they do in any job. And like at the reservoir, like in any procedural place, they sounded bureaucratic before they sounded strange. I'm going to lay them out the way I came to understand them. Though nobody ever handed me a list, they lived in the software, in Greaves's corrections, in the things Okafor told me not to do. You never changed a reference number. You corrected the image to the record, never the record to the image. You looked at every image fully, no skimming, no confirming blind. You never saved a copy of an image to any external location. And the machines had no ports that worked and no internet to speak of. Just the internal network. You never discussed specific images outside the floor. And there was one more. The one that came to matter most, which Greaves told me himself in my 4th week. Quietly, leaning on my cubicle wall. He said, "If you ever get an image where you recognize the location, where it's somewhere you know, don't correct it, don't confirm it, flag it and call me, and I'll reassign it to someone else." We don't have people work images of places they know. It's a quality thing. You're not objective about a sky you've stood under. I asked, reasonably, how I'd ever recognize a location from a cropped photo of the sky with a code in the header. He said I'd be surprised. He said the codes mapped to real places, and that after a while, you started to learn some of them. And that the ones near where you lived would feel different, would catch in your eye, and that when that happened, I should let it go and call him. It was a quality control thing, he said. We don't correct skies we have a relationship with. I accepted it. I accepted all of it. I want you to understand how easy it is to accept things one at a time. No single rule is alarming. It's only when you lay them next to each other, much later, that they stop describing a data cleanup operation and start describing something else. A set of precautions taken by people who knew exactly what they were doing and exactly why it was dangerous, and had decided the safest course was to never tell the people doing it. The pattern with the dates got worse, or I should say, I let myself finally look at it in my 5th week, and looking at it broke something open. I started keeping track, not on paper, because I wasn't stupid enough to write it down at my desk, but in my head. And then at home, in the Notes app on my phone. After dinner, when Dana was asleep, I kept track of the future dated images and what they showed before I corrected them. And I started, just for myself, to compare them to the weather. The actual weather. Because the future dated images, the wrong ones, the ones I painted clear, they showed weather. And the dates were only a week or 2 out. So when a date came due, I could check. The first time I did it deliberately was a Thursday. I'd corrected an image dated the following Tuesday, a location code I didn't know, that showed heavy low cloud and that ugly green-gray light, against a reference that said clear. I'd painted it clear. I confirmed it. And on the following Tuesday, at home, idle, I looked up the weather for the region I thought the code might cover. And it had been a clear day. Full sun. Exactly what the reference said. Exactly what I'd corrected the image to show. And not at all what the image had shown before I touched it. I told myself that proved nothing. The reference was right. The image was wrong. The equipment had captured garbage. I'd fixed it. The weather had matched the correct record. End of story. That's a coherent reading. That's the reading Greaves would have given me. The image was wrong, and I made it right. But there's another reading, and once it occurred to me I couldn't make it unoccur. The other reading is that the image wasn't wrong. The image was a photograph of what the sky was going to do. And the record was a statement of what the sky was supposed to do. And they disagreed because the sky was planning to disobey. And my job, the actual content of my job, was to take the photographs of the sky disobeying and correct them, paint them, fix them, until they matched the record of obedience, and click confirm. And on Tuesday, the sky had been clear. The sky had done what the record said, not what the photograph showed. The photograph showed the storm, and I erased the storm, and the storm didn't come. I know how that sounds. I knew how it sounded then. I sat with that reading for a week, and I did not act on it, because acting on it would have meant believing it. And believing it would have meant I'd quit. And quitting would have meant I was the unemployed husband of a woman about to give birth. And I was not willing to trade a wage I could touch for a theory I couldn't, built out of clouds and coincidence. So I did what I do, I built the wall. I kept working. The thing that started to crack the wall was the dwell time, and the meeting Okafor had warned me about. I'd gotten fast. Too fast, maybe, because the work was repetitive and my hands knew it now. And in my 6th week, I got an email from Greaves asking me to come to the small conference room at the end of the floor. My stomach dropped. I thought of Okafor saying people who got pulled in twice didn't come back. But it was only once, and I'd been doing the work right, looking at everything. I was sure of it. I went in. Greaves was there with a laptop, and a man I'd never seen, younger than Greaves, in a better suit than anyone on our floor wore, who didn't give a name and who Greaves introduced only as from the client side. Greaves turned the laptop toward me. He had my dwell times on the screen, a graph. He said my numbers were good, better than good. He said my correction accuracy was the highest on the floor for a new hire, that I caught discrepancies other people missed, that the client was pleased. He said it in the tone of praise, but there was something underneath it I didn't like, the way you don't like being told you're a natural at a thing you've started to suspect you shouldn't be good at. And then the man from the client side spoke, for the first and only time in that meeting. And he asked me a question that I have never been able to put down. He asked, in a pleasant, idle voice like small talk, "Do you ever check them? After? Do you ever go look at the days to see if they came out the way you fixed them?" I lied. I said no. I said, why would I? It's just data. I correct it and I forget it. I lied instantly and completely, and I don't entirely know why, except that every animal instinct I had told me that the true answer, yes, I checked Tuesday and Tuesday was clear, was the most dangerous sentence I could possibly say in that room. The man looked at me for a moment. The long moment. The one Greaves did and Okafor did. And then he smiled and said that was the right attitude. That the people who did best in this work were the ones who didn't carry it home, and the meeting ended. Greaves walked me out, and at the door he said, "Lo," just to me. Good answer. The same thing Pell had said about a different question in my first phone call. And I understood that I'd passed a test I hadn't known I was taking, and that passing it had cost me something I couldn't name. After that, I checked the days obsessively, in secret, terrified, and the pattern held. Every future dated image I corrected, every storm I painted into sun, every overcast I cleared, the days came out matching the record, matching what I'd made the image show. I corrected a sky to clear, and the day was clear. I corrected a sky to light rain, ending by noon, because that's what the reference said, even though the image showed a downpour. And the day had light rain that ended by noon. Whatever I confirmed, the sky did. Or the sky was always going to do it, and the images were always wrong. And I was a man losing his grip on cause and effect in a windowless office that smelled like ozone. I genuinely could not tell which. And I want to be honest that I still can't, fully, even now. That's the part that's hardest to live with. Not knowing whether I was correcting the world or just recording it. The contradiction I couldn't explain away, the one that ended my ability to pretend, came in my 8th week. And it came from the logs. We each had a personal correction history, accessible from our own machine. A list of every image we'd confirmed, searchable. I'd never had a reason to use it. But after the conference room meeting, I started going back through my own history at the end of shifts, looking at the future dated ones, building my secret record. And one evening, going back through, I found an image in my history I had no memory of confirming. That alone wasn't strange. I'd confirmed tens of thousands. But this one, I would have remembered, because the location code was one I'd learned. Greaves was right that you learn the ones near you. I'd figured out, over the weeks, by cross-referencing dates and weather, that one particular code prefix mapped to my own region, my own city. And the rule was clear. You don't correct a sky you have a relationship with. You flag it and call Greaves. And here in my own history was an image with that prefix, future dated 4 days out, that I had supposedly confirmed myself, with a correction applied, my correction, my user ID, my timestamp, 11 days ago, on a day I could account for, a day I'd worked a normal shift and gone home, and I had no memory of seeing a single image from my own city, let alone correcting one, let alone confirming one I was explicitly told to flag. I opened it. You could open your confirmed images, view only, you couldn't change them. I opened it, and it showed a clear sky, pale blue, thin high cloud, the corrected version, the after. And the system also kept the before, the original, in a separate pane, grayed, labeled pre-correction, and I clicked it. And the before of that image, the sky over my own city 4 days from then, the sky I had supposedly corrected to calm pale blue, was the worst sky I had ever seen in any of those images. In 8 weeks of those images, not a storm. Storms I'd seen. This was a sky the color of an old bruise gone yellow at the edges, low, heavy, wrong in a way I don't have the vocabulary for, with a quality to the light that made my stomach turn just looking at the screen. And across the bottom of the frame, where the crop usually cut off the ground, this one wasn't cropped all the way. And there was a thin strip of horizon, and the horizon was a skyline. And I knew the skyline. I'd driven toward it every morning of my life. It was downtown. It was the view from the highway I took to this office. And under that bruised yellow sky, the skyline was wrong too. Though I couldn't say how. I only know that I looked at it, and my whole body understood something my mind refused to put into words. And the date was 4 days out. And someone had corrected it, painted that sky calm and blue, using my user ID on a day I have no memory of, and confirmed it. Which, according to everything I'd come to suspect, meant that in 4 days, the sky over my city would be calm and blue, and not whatever that bruised yellow thing was. That the correction had already been made, the record already enforced, the disobedient future already painted over. Except I didn't remember doing it. And the rules said I never should have been allowed to. And someone, or something, had used my name to do it anyway, 11 days ago. And let me find it now, 4 days before the date came due. Sitting alone at my cubicle at 6:40 in the evening, with the cleaning crew not yet arrived, and the ozone smell thick. And the future of the only place I'd ever lived, hanging in a grayed-out pane on my monitor, painted calm by my own hand, over a sky I would have given anything to never have seen. I sat there a long time. Long enough that the dwell time counter, the one that tracked your eyes on an image, ticked up and up in the corner, hundreds of seconds, a number I'd never let it reach. A number that would absolutely get me pulled into the meeting, and I didn't care. I couldn't look away from that horizon, from my city under that sky, 4 days out, already corrected, already confirmed, the storm already painted into a calm that hadn't happened yet. And then, while I was looking at it, the grayed pre-correction pane refreshed on its own, the way the software sometimes refreshed when a record updated on the network. And the bruised yellow sky over my city flickered and reloaded, and the date in the header rolled forward by 1 to 3 days out. And the image was wrong again, uncorrected again, the bruise back, darker. And where my user ID had been logged as the correcting agent, the field now read, in plain gray text, pending assigned, and the name in the assignment field, The reviewer the system had just assigned to correct the sky over my city 3 days from now. The name waiting there for me to come in tomorrow morning and do my job was mine. I logged off. That was the first thing I did. The only thing my hands knew how to do. The muscle memory of leaving for the day, log off, push in the chair, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes without starting it, telling myself the things you tell yourself. The dwell time counter had run into the hundreds. They'd see that. I'd be in the conference room tomorrow, the man from the client side, the laptop, the long looks. So my first thought, my actual first thought, sitting in that car with the future of my city painted calm on a monitor 9 floors up, was about my own dwell time and whether I'd get pulled into a meeting. That tells you something about me. That tells you what kind of man you're listening to. The world over my home was set to do something the color of a healed bruise, and my mind reached, by habit, for the smallest available worry, the one I could survive, because the large one had no handle on it I could grip. I built the wall on the drive home. I was good at it by then. I'd had 8 weeks of practice. The wall went like this. The header had glitched, the software refreshed, records updated off the network, dates rolled. It was buggy old software on a buggy old machine in a building with an expired elevator certificate and a sign that said, "Working," taped over the truth. My user ID, showing up on a correction I didn't remember, meant nothing. Because I'd confirmed tens of thousands. Because memory is a sieve. Because I was tired. Because Dana wasn't sleeping, and so I wasn't sleeping. And a tired man forgets. The skyline was a coincidence. Cities look alike from the air. A cropped strip of horizon could be anywhere. And the bruised sky was just weather. Just a bad front. Just a storm the equipment had caught and the record said wouldn't come. And either it would come or it wouldn't. And either way, it had nothing to do with me. Because I was a man who clicked a button. And buttons don't move the sky. I almost believed it by the time I got home. Dana was up, on the couch, one hand on her belly. And she asked how work was, and I said boring, the way I always said boring. And she said I looked gray, and I said I was tired, which was true. And I went and stood in the shower until the hot ran out. And I did not tell my pregnant wife that I'd seen a photograph of the sky over our city 3 days from now. And that it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And that my name was on the work order to make it go away. You don't bring that home. That's what I told myself. The truth is, I didn't bring it home because bringing it home would have made it real. And I needed it to not be real for at least one more night. I went in early the next morning. I don't fully know why. Part of it was that I wanted to look again before anyone else was on the floor, to confirm to myself that it had been a glitch, that the daylight version of the thing would be smaller. Part of it, the part I'm less proud of, was that if I was going to be pulled into a meeting over the dwell time, I wanted to get ahead of it, to be at my desk early and working hard when they came. The good employee, the one who explains the anomaly before it's used against him. Even then, 3 days out, I was managing my standing with the company. I can't make that not be true. Okafor was already there. She was the only other person in that early, in the cubicle next to mine, and she didn't usually beat me in. She had her coat still on and a cup of the dishwater coffee going cold next to her keyboard, and she wasn't working. She was just sitting, looking at her dark monitor. And when I came around the partition, she turned and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her before. And she said quietly, "You found one, near you." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She read it off my face the way she read everything. "Sit down," she said, "not your desk. Here." And she pulled the spare chair from the empty cubicle on her other side, and she kept her voice low, under the hum of the fluorescent lights, under the building's HVAC. And for the first time in 8 weeks, somebody on that floor told me something true. She'd been there 2 years. She'd found one near her, she said, about 14 months in. A code prefix she recognized, a date a week out, her town, a sky that was wrong. And she'd done what I was about to do, what everybody does, she said. She'd gone to Greaves. Because Greaves was decent. Because the rule said flag it and call him and he'd reassign it. And Greaves had taken it off her, had been kind about it, had said exactly what the rule said. That you don't work a sky you have a relationship with, and he'd reassigned it to someone else on the floor, and that someone else had corrected it. And the day had come, and her town had been fine. Clear, calm, whatever the record said. So it worked, I said. The rule worked. You flag it, he reassigns it. Someone with no relationship to the place corrects it. The place is fine. She looked at me for a long moment. The long look, the one I understood now, was the look of someone deciding how much truth a person can carry. The someone he reassigned it to, she said. Do you remember a guy named Marsh? No, you wouldn't. He was before you. Reassigned my image, corrected my town's sky. 3 weeks later, Marsh stopped coming in. HR said he transferred to another contract. His desk got cleared on a Friday. She turned her cup a quarter turn on the desk, a small, needless motion, her hands needing something to do. About a year before Marsh, there was a woman who corrected somebody else's near image. She left too. Not fired. Just gone. Quietly. No goodbye. A transfer nobody could name the destination of. She stopped. I started watching after mine. Who gets the reassignments? Who corrects the near skies? Greaves spreads them around so no one person gets too many. And the ones who get them, they don't last. They go quiet, they go gray, and then they're gone, and the floor fills the seat with somebody new who doesn't know to watch. I said the thing I had to say. I said it isn't possible. I said it's just images. I said I correct 50 storms a week, and I'm fine. We're all fine. That's the whole job. You correct strangers' skies, she said. Places you've never stood under. That costs you nothing. That's the work. That's what the wage is for. She finally looked away from me, back at her dark monitor. It's the near ones. The ones with a relationship. Somebody has to correct those too. The system doesn't let a near sky go uncorrected. I've never once seen one expire unworked. But correcting a place you're tied to. It takes a price the stranger skies don't. And the rule, flag it and call Greaves. The rule isn't there to protect the city. The city gets corrected either way. The rule is there so that the person who pays the price isn't the person with the strongest tie. Greaves moves it to someone with a weaker tie or no tie they know about. And they pay instead a smaller price, paid by somebody who doesn't understand they're paying it. That's all the rule is. It's not protection. It's who gets the bill. I want to tell you, I didn't believe her. The wall in me was very strong, and it was working hard. But she'd named the thing I'd felt for weeks and couldn't say, the shape under the boring. And a thing you felt in the dark for weeks has a different weight when somebody says it out loud in the fluorescent morning. I didn't believe her exactly, but I stopped being able to not believe her, which is a different and worse condition. I asked her what I should do. She was quiet a long time. Then she said, "You go to Greaves. You flag it. That's the rule. And the rule is the only thing that's ever worked for anybody. He reassigns it. Somebody you don't know corrects your city's sky. And your city is fine. And you go home to your wife." She paused. And somebody you don't know pays for it. A little. The way somebody you don't know paid for my town. That's the trade. That's the only trade on the table. You don't get a version where nobody pays. The sky's going to be corrected no matter what any of us does. The only choice is who holds the brush. And then she said the thing that I've carried since. The thing that made me understand her. Made me understand all of them. The quiet ones who'd been there years. I let Marsh pay for my town, she said. I knew by the time it was his turn, more or less what I'm telling you now. I suspected it, and I let him do it anyway, because it was my town, and my mother lives in my town. And I made the math. And I let a man I worked next to for a year hold the brush. He didn't know, I did. So when you ask me what you should do, understand you're asking somebody who already made the choice you're about to make, and made it the selfish way, and would make it the same way again. I'm not better than this place. I'm just the one who'll tell you what it is. Greaves came in at 8. I'd been at my desk an hour by then. Not working, the floor filling up around me, the coffee machine wheezing, the vending machine eating somebody's money down the hall. All of it so ordinary. And I watched Greaves hang his coat and start his computer and sip his coffee. And I thought about going to him, and I didn't. Not right away, because going to him meant choosing. And I, like Okafor, would choose the selfish way. And I wanted a few more minutes of being a man who hadn't yet. What pushed me wasn't conscience. I want to be honest about that. Because the temptation in telling this is to make myself the man who agonized. I did agonize, but the agonizing didn't decide anything. What decided it was that I opened my queue at 8:40 and the system had loaded my first image of the day, and it was the one. My city. 2 days out now. The date had rolled again, overnight. The bruised yellow sky, the wrong skyline, assigned to me. Loaded into my queue as my work for the morning, confirm button live at the bottom of the screen. The correction tools in the sidebar waiting. And the dwell time counter starting its slow climb the second the image appeared, watching me. Timing how long I looked at the death of my own city before I did something about it. And I understood that the system wasn't going to let me not choose. It had put the brush in my hand. If I sat there, it would log me sitting there. If I corrected it, I'd pay Okafor's price. The price Marsh paid. The gray slow vanishing. With Dana 7 months along, and a lease we couldn't afford on one income. If I flagged it, Greaves would move it to a stranger. And the stranger would pay, and my city would be fine. There was no button for leaving it alone. There was never a button for leaving it alone. That was the whole architecture of the place, 8 weeks of it. The careful absence of any button that let you change the record. The careful absence of any button that let a wrong sky simply stand. You corrected, or you reassigned the correcting. Those were the doors. There was no third door, and there had never been one. And I'd been working in a building with no third door for 2 months, and called it boring. I went to Greaves. I flagged it. I did the selfish thing, the same thing Okafor did. The same thing every quiet, long-lasting person on that floor had done. And I told myself the things you tell yourself. That the city would be fine. That someone with no tie would barely feel it. That I had a wife and a baby coming, and I couldn't be the one to go gray and vanish. That I hadn't made the rules. That the sky was going to be corrected no matter what. That I was only choosing not to be the one to hold the brush. And every one of those things was true. And being true didn't make it anything other than what it was. Which was me deciding that a stranger should pay instead of me. Greaves took it the way Okafor said he would. Kindly. He looked at the image, just for a second. And his face did the thing. the patient tiredness deepening. And he said, "Your city, isn't it? I'm sorry. You did right to flag it. That's exactly what the rule's for. Don't think about it again." He reassigned it from his own machine, 2 clicks, and the image vanished from my queue, and a clean stranger's sky loaded in its place. A 1991 image of cloud over somewhere I'd never been. And the dwell counter reset, and Greaves patted the top of my cubicle wall. Twice, the way you pat the roof of a car you're sending off, and went back to his desk. I corrected skies all day. Strangers' skies. They cost me nothing, just like she said. And I tried not to wonder who Greaves had reassigned my city to, and I failed. And I spent the afternoon glancing around the floor at the backs of people's heads. 20 quiet people in 2 rows, wondering which one of them had my city in their queue. Which one of them was painting the bruise out of the sky over Dana and the baby and the apartment we couldn't afford. Which one of them was holding the brush I'd handed back. And what it was costing them. And whether they knew. I figured out who it was on the second day, the day before the date. It was a kid named Doss. Newer than me, 3 weeks in. The seat that had filled after somebody else went quiet, the cycle Okafor had described. The floor-filling seats with people who didn't know to watch. He was maybe 23. He talked too much in the break room, the way new people do before the floor teaches them not to. And that morning, at the dishwater machine, he was telling me, unprompted, that he'd had a weird one yesterday. A city, a real ugly sky. Took him an hour to correct because the cloud structure was so complex. But he'd nailed it. He was proud of it. His accuracy numbers were climbing. Greaves had said he had a real eye for it. He said it the exact way I'd felt in my 6th week. That uneasy pride in being good at a thing you've started to suspect you shouldn't be good at. Except he hadn't started to suspect yet. He was just proud. He had a real eye for it. I could have told him. That was my second clean open window. Like the bank teller in the other life I keep comparing this to, like the moment with Reyes. No, that's not mine. I'm getting confused. I mean, I had a clear chance to say to this kid, listen, the near ones cost something. Watch what happens to you over the next few weeks. Watch your sleep. Watch your color. Get out before it's a habit. I could have given him what Okafor gave me. The truth, even late, even partial. I didn't. I said, nice, good work. And I got my coffee and I went back to my desk. Because telling him would have meant explaining how I knew. And explaining how I knew would have meant admitting it was my city, my flag, my reassignment, my brush handed to him. And I did not want this kid looking at me the way I'd want to look at the person who'd handed me that. I chose, again, the smaller cowardice, the quiet one, the one that just looks like minding your business. I let Doss be proud of correcting my city's sky, and I let him not know what it would cost him, the same way Okafor let Marsh not know. And I understand now that this is how the place stays staffed. Not through one big evil, but through a chain of ordinary people, each choosing the small, quiet cowardice, each handing the brush down to someone newer, each telling themselves they didn't make the rules. The date came. The day the bruised sky was supposed to fall over my city. 2 days after I flagged it. The day after Doss corrected it. It was clear. I want to be precise, because the precision is the whole horror of it. It was a beautiful day. I drove in toward that skyline I'd seen wrong in the image, and it was right. It was just the skyline. Downtown in pale morning sun, thin high cloud. Exactly the calm, pale blue the corrected version had shown. Nothing happened. No storm, no bruise, no whatever it was. Dana texted me at lunch a photo of the park near our apartment. Sunlight, her feet up on a bench. The caption, "Perfect day, come home early." And I looked at that photo of my pregnant wife under a calm, corrected sky, and I felt something I don't have a clean word for. Relief and nausea braided together so tight, I couldn't pull them apart. Because the sky was fine, and the sky was fine. Because somebody had painted it fine, and the somebody was a kid 3 weeks into a job who thought he had a real eye for it. Doss didn't come in the next day. Greaves said he'd transferred to another contract. Said it at the morning huddle, flat, the way he'd said it about others, the way Okafor told me he'd said it about Marsh. Doss's desk got cleared that Friday, his coffee mug and his cheap pens and a little potted thing he'd kept on the partition. All of it gone into a box, and the box gone wherever the boxes go. And a new person started the following Monday, younger than Doss, who didn't know to watch, and the seat was full again, and the floor went on. I never saw Doss again. I don't know what went quiet, went gray, then gone actually means, physically, where they go, whether it's death or something else. Whether transferred to another contract is this place's version of transferred to facility maintenance, no. I don't know why I keep reaching for that phrase. I've never worked anywhere that used it. I only know that a kid who corrected my city's sky stopped existing in my life the way the others had. And that I was fine. My color was fine. My sleep was bad, but bad from a baby and a guilty conscience. Ordinary bad. Survivable bad. And that the trade had gone exactly the way Okafor said. My city was saved. A stranger paid. I held the brush just long enough to hand it to someone else. I should have quit then. The honest accounting is that the danger to my city was past, the sky was corrected, and there was nothing keeping me at Continental Aerovisual Records except the wage. And the wage is exactly what kept me. Dana was 8 months along. The lease. The baby's everything, all the small, expensive things a baby is. I'd made a deal with myself that I'd stay till the baby came, and the spring job started for Dana. And then I'd find something clean, something with windows, something where the work was just the work. I told myself that staying a few more months wasn't choosing the place, it was just bridging to the next thing. And that's true. And it's also exactly the sentence every quiet person on that floor must have said to themselves in their own first months. The bridge that becomes the house you live in. I stayed. I corrected strangers' skies. I got good at not thinking about who'd held the brush before me in any given seat. I got good at the long look myself, I noticed. The one Greaves and Okafor and the client man gave new people. I caught myself giving it to the kid who replaced Doss when he asked in the break room what the harm was in going fast. I heard Okafor's words come out of my own mouth. Just look at every single one. All the way. It's the whole job. And I watched the kid file it under overcautious veteran advice the way I had. And I understood that I'd become part of the mechanism that keeps new people from understanding. That I was a link in the chain now, that the place hadn't needed to corrupt me with anything dramatic. It had just needed me to want my wage badly enough to stop asking. And I had. And I did. The baby came in the spring. A girl. I'm not going to tell you her name. Healthy, loud, perfect. And I held her in the hospital under fluorescent lights that smelled like the office, and I made the resolutions you make, that I'd get out, Nirat, that I'd find clean work, that I wouldn't raise her on money from a place like that. Dana's better job started. The math got easier. I had every reason and every means to leave. What kept me, in the end, wasn't the money anymore. I want to be exact about this, because it's the worst part. By summer, the money wasn't the thing. The thing was that I'd started getting near skies of my own. Not my city, not after that first one, but other places I'd developed a relationship with. The hospital where my daughter was born, I got a near sky of that. A code prefix I recognized. A date a week out, an ugly one. And the rule said flag it and call Greaves, and I did. And a stranger corrected it, and the hospital was fine. My mother's town, 3 states away, I got that one too, and flagged it, and a stranger paid. Dana's parents' lake place, the street my daughter would grow up on. One after another, over months, the system fed me near skies of every place I loved, every place I'd built a relationship with. And every single time, the rule gave me the same 2 doors. Correct it and pay, or flag it and let a stranger pay. And every single time I chose the stranger. And every single time, the place I loved was saved. And somebody 3 weeks into the job went quiet and gray and transferred to another contract. And I understood, slowly, the way I understand everything, too late and in pieces, that this was the actual deal. This was why people stayed for years, why Okafor was still there, why the quiet long-timers were quiet and long. It wasn't the wage. The wage was the hook that set you. What kept you was that once you were inside, the system showed you the skies over everything you loved and gave you the power to save them at a price you could pay with somebody else's life. And once you've done that once you've let a DOS pay for your city, you can't stop, because stopping means the next near sky over your daughter's street goes to nobody or goes to you. And you've already proven to yourself exactly what you'll trade to keep her sky calm. The place doesn't trap you with a locked door. It traps you with the people you love and the going rate for their safety. And the rate is always somebody you don't know. And you always pay it, and you hate yourself. And you come in the next morning and pay it again. I asked Okafor once, near the end, why she didn't leave with all she knew. She said, "Where would I go where they can't show me my mother's sky? At least here I can see it coming. At least here I can flag it." She said it without drama, turning her cold coffee a quarter turn on the desk. Out there, you just find out after. In here, you get to choose. Choosing's worse, but I'd rather choose. And I knew exactly what she meant, which is how I knew I was already her, already them, already staying. I'm still there. That's the thing I have to tell you. The thing that isn't a clean ending because there isn't one. I'm still at Continental Aero Visual Records, 9th floor, the ozone smell, the dishwater coffee, the dwell time counter, the 2 rows of quiet people. My daughter is walking now. She has never once seen a bad sky over the places she lives. And that is not luck. That is me, every time, choosing the brush and handing it to a stranger. I have lost count of the strangers. I made myself lose count. Losing count was a thing I did on purpose, a wall I built, because the count was the one number in that building I couldn't bear to be accurate about. Me, the man whose whole job was accuracy. There are 2 more things, and then I'll stop, because I've told you the parts that matter, and the rest is just me living with it. The first is that a few months ago, I got promoted. Sort of. Greaves is getting on. I've been there longer than almost anyone now. Which still surprises me. The longest lasting are the ones who pay the most regularly. That's the grim arithmetic of seniority in that place. And Greaves asked me, quietly, leaning on my cubicle wall the way he does, whether I'd be willing to take on some of the reassignments. To be one of the people who handles it when somebody flags a near sky. To hold the list, spread them around. Decide who gets which near sky to correct. To be the one who chooses who holds the brush. He framed it as trust, as seniority, a little more money. He said I had good judgment, that the client liked me, that I understood the work. And I understood what he was actually offering, which was Okafor's mother's math. But for the whole floor, the power and the burden of deciding every day which stranger pays so that someone else's city is saved. Greaves's actual job. The thing under the soft voice and the patient tiredness. I understand his tiredness completely now. It's the tiredness of a man who decides 20 times a day, who holds the brush, and has done it for years, and is still decent somehow, still kind to new hires, and is so tired. I haven't said yes. I haven't said no either. It's sitting there, the offer, the way the worst things in that place always just sit there and wait. Because the place has all the time there is, I think I'll say yes. I think the reason I'll say yes is the same reason for all of it. That if I'm the one holding the list, I can make sure the near skies over my daughter's life never, ever go to me. That I can keep handing those particular brushes to strangers with my own hand, reliably, forever, and not have to hope someone else does it for me. That's the logic. It's a monstrous logic, and it's mine, and I can feel myself walking toward it the way you walk toward a thing you've already decided. The second thing is the one I check every morning, the way you said, the way a man checks a thing he's afraid of. When I log in now, before the queue loads, there's a status field on my profile, my reviewer profile, with my stats, my accuracy, my dwell average, my tenure. And below all that, there's a line that wasn't there when I started. A line I've watched appear on the long-timers' profiles when I've walked past their screens. A line called Associated Locations. It's a list. It's the list of places the system has decided I have a relationship with, the places it pulls my near skies from. When I started, it was empty. Then it was my city. Then the hospital, my mother's town, the lake, my daughter's street. Growing, every place I let myself love, getting added to the list of places the system knows it can use to keep me paying. This morning there was a new entry on the list. I didn't put it there. I don't add them, the system adds them. It watches what I love and it lists it. And the new entry, the newest place the system has decided I have a relationship with, the newest place it will start showing me bad skies over so that I'll keep choosing strangers to save it, is the elementary school. The one 3 blocks from our apartment. The one my daughter starts in the fall. She isn't even enrolled yet. We only decided last week, at the kitchen table, Dana and I, over the cheap pens and the unpaid pile of mail. We only said the name of it out loud to each other twice. And it's already on my list. The system knew before the paperwork did. It's waiting. Somewhere in the queue, dated some morning this fall, there's a sky over my daughter's school. And it'll come to me, and I'll have 2 doors and no third one. And I already know which door I'll choose, and I already know I'll come in the next morning and choose it again. And the worst part, the part I can't build a wall high enough against, is that I'm grateful the list exists, because it means I'll see it coming. Because Okafor was right. Because choosing is worse, but I'd rather choose. And that's the sentence. That's the whole sentence. That's what the place made me. And I walked in on my own to get away from being broke. And I stayed because the wage was good. And I'm still there. And the school is on the list. And the sky over it is calm for now.